An article came across my computer this morning. I wanted to talk about it a little bit. It's from the Epoch Times, but this is related to a case that happened in Illinois just recently. This is the article. The Illinois, I won't read the whole thing. The Illinois Office of the Attorney General has released a report on Catholic clergy engaging in child sex abuse. Its investigation found nearly 2,000 children have been abused by clergy in the state. Quote, decades of Catholic leadership decisions and policies have allowed known child sex abusers to hide, often in plain sight. And because the statute of limitations has frequently expired, many survivors of child sex abuse at the hands of Catholic clerics will never see justice in a legal sense. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul wrote in the introduction to the 696-page report. They may never be held accountable in court, he said, but naming them is meant to provide a public accountability and a measure of healing to survivors who have long suffered in silence. It is not the first time such news has come to light. Former Attorney General Lisa Madigan, Illinois, released a report in 2018 detailing church abuse in the church. Raoul continued the investigation. And this has gone on. It's state after state after state. There's many of these kinds of articles and things and these situations. And I have some few statistics. There's what we're talking about is thousands, right? There something like they said 2,000 additional reports of cases of sexual abuse. Anyway, before I get into statistics, I just want to say that this is the issue, and this is why I'm bringing it up. This has been an issue with me since 2003, and as I said, I was not an active Catholic even at this time in 2002 or 2003 when this sexual allegation thing started really taking on critical mass, a lot of steam with Boston and this report on McCarrick and all this kind of stuff. There's been a general embroiled sense of excitement and disappointment within the Catholic Church. And like I said, I wasn't active until fairly recently, the last 10 years. I've been active the last 10 years. So up until 2015, or all that period, I wasn't, I didn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, other than the fact that of my own Catholic background. My point is this. The Catholic Church there are 3.5 million Catholics in Illinois. There's roughly 60 million U.S. Catholics, and there's roughly 35,000 Catholic priests. The numbers are pretty big. 25% of the U.S. population reports as being Catholic. And what is Catholic? We can call it a sect of Christianity, but it's a source of refuge for a certain population of people. I know there are a lot of troubles in it, and there have been a lot of troubles in the Catholic Church for a long time. And the way that the bishops or the Pope or the magisterium or whatever deals with sexual abuse cases, and there's an obvious problem, a structural problem in the priesthood itself, especially in a secularized society. Now, the forces that created a secularized society are now after the priest. In other words, I'm going to say my argument is yes, sexual abuse isn't good. It's bad. It's a horrible thing. People pay a big price. It's a terrible, terrible thing. The question is the timing on this thing and also the environment in which it happens tells me that it's more about a takedown of a source of refuge, a large one, so that these people are really destitute. Catholics have nowhere to go. The Protestant churches are scattered and fragmented. They don't have a centralized leadership, while the Catholic Church does. So that I'd say that this is, again, my common theme of social engineering. This is a social engineering tectonic reworking of the Catholic Church by modernizing forces. You know, there's been a pressure on the Catholic Church from modernism for a long time. Now, as soon as you say the word modernism, it dates you as a kind of a medieval person. But I'm saying that modernism is a real issue in the Catholic Church, in that you have this medieval kind of a structure based on a certain sort of a form of God as Father and Jesus as Son and all these kinds of things. Arguably, you can rework them or solve them or whatever, but they're mythological in nature. And meanwhile, the people that are a part of it is, you know, redoing the Catholic Church is like remodeling a house, or actually demolishing a house while the people are living in it. And so that if you want to demolish that house, then you have to get the people out, which is what is happening right now. People will leave Catholicism based on these kinds of news. They'll when it comes time to support the church, they'll reach into their pocket and go, well, all I'm going to be doing is supporting a bunch of abusive priests and stuff like this, not really understanding the kind of numbers involved. This should be seen in the context of some statistics. There's something like 60 million Catholics. There's something like 35,000 priests. The abuse cases, fully 2/3 of them were reported in a 10-year period between 93 and 2003. That's 2/3 of these cases. As an example, total, and this is according to Wikipedia, 4,500 priests have allegations against them. Something like half of them are one-time reports. Another third of those, of the remaining, are like two-time reports. And there's a very, very small number of these 4,500 priests, maybe 10% of them, that have more than one. So we're talking about 450 priests that have more than one, more than 2 or 3 reports of sexual. Saying we have to look at the numbers compared to the damage that's done to supposedly fix it or heal. Damage is immense to heal it. And in Illinois, they're talking about finding an additional 2,000 cases. Now, this is a place that has 2 million Catholics, and these cases go all the way back to the 70s and earlier. So we've got cases from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and those cases were on the steady decrease. They increased in the 60s. They went up a little again in the 70s, and then in the 80s they leveled off and declined, and by the 90s they were back. By the 90s, by 1990, the reports, the cases that they reported, again, these reports didn't happen back then. 2/3 of the reports happened between 93 and 2003. A full third of them happened in a 1-year period, the reports. So in other words, something stirred the nest that made it so that people are running out, and they're, you know, maybe, and how many people are ambulance chases on this? How many, you know, and how many organizations were funded to chase down the priests? I'm not discounting the damage of it. I'm just saying, look at the timing and look at the stakes and look at what's going on and look at who might be involved in this thing. The cost benefit analysis spiritually on this thing is vastly tilted in the direction of destroying the Catholic Church as a source of refuge. This really, when it comes down to it, I'm making an appeal to Catholics here, is to recognize, this is what I see, this is what I think. Number one, there's an effort to take down the Roman Catholic Church, or to radically remodel it into some acceptable form to someone. And that the sexual abuse situation is a lever. I'm not saying that they're fake abuses. I'm not saying that it's not a serious issue. What I'm saying is the timing and the use of it and the purpose of it is to rework and demolish the church. And these aren't churchgoers. It's not happening from within. I would say it's happening from without, because as the Catholic Church represents the largest, if you take Catholics as a country, it's the largest country on the planet. I think it might be behind China, but it's roughly about the same size. In other words, 1.2 billion Catholics or something worldwide. So you have a large demographic called Catholics of a certain, and they are under one leader. So this represents a certain thing. This is why there would be a legitimate takedown or remodeling or reworking or renovation of the Catholic Church. And this is an appeal to Catholics because, and my excitement about it, and I'm animated about this because the psychological profile of Catholics is they'll take it on. They always take it on. I mean, it's like, they'll say to themselves, the Catholics need to clean this up. We need to charge the ball. We need to take care of this thing. They will take down their own religion. Catholics will take down their own religion in order to satisfy secular forces that would like to remodel Catholicism. They did the same thing in the Second Vatican Council through the 70s and 80s. There's a small minority of Catholics who are willing to hold any ground at all. They're completely relativized in the name of suffering silently or carrying their cross or just being responsible for all the pain in the room. I take responsibility for all the pain in the room. It's my responsibility as a Catholic. It's part of the Catholic profile. I've seen it in businesses. In the architectural world, the Catholics are having nervous breakdowns while the Protestants are, enhancing their 401ks. It's the way this place is set up. Catholics suffer. They tend to suffer, and it doesn't have anything to do with their belief system. It's a conditioning. It has to do with the way the church is set up and whatnot. There's a kind of a neurosis built into the religion. For all of its positive features that I could talk about in many, many places, one of the problems with it is a sense of shame. I would say shame that Catholics typically carry. So when I see an article like this, and I see this, what's his name, Raoul, this attorney general guy, coming out and once again taking pot shots at the Catholics for good reason. For good reason. This is shooting fish in a barrel. It's taking low-hanging fruit to attack the church for sexual improprieties. That's a clear and easy one to go with. But I would say, look at the context, look at what's possibly driving this thing, and I would beg Catholics to revisit their faith, make themselves familiar with some of the facts. And I don't mean the facts in terms of look at the numbers of abuse. Yeah, there's a lot of them. But if you look at the numbers of Catholics and the number of priests and the general setup of the whole thing, given the Second Vatican Council, the secularization of the church, and the inherent problems. I mean, you had whole convents of nuns becoming lesbian overnight, based on the culture pulling the rug out from underneath them. You say, well, finally, they're telling the truth about who they are and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's your viewpoint, but I don't really see it that way. That we live in contextual settings. And in the case of Catholicism, the secularized, modernized context for Catholicism is going to expose a lot of Catholics to the forces of change without refuge in their body of Christ, without refuge in their communion of saints, without refuge in their tradition, without refuge in their liturgical, ritualized world. That's already been under attack, and it's fading. I would say the Catholic Church as we know it in this takedown, maybe I should just celebrate it. Maybe it will accelerate the ending of the Catholic Church through bankruptcy. That all these churches, you can look on Wikipedia and look at the numbers of churches that have shelled out millions and millions and millions of dollars to deal with this situation. It's an endless situation. And as we become in the current day more and more sensitive to the skin of people who have endured abuses of various kinds, and that the abuse has a clear and definite sort of a form, A guy in a black robe with a collar went after a kid. Okay, that's beautiful because it's the equivalent of torturing baby puppies. It's a terrible thing. No one can argue against it. I'm just saying, back off a little bit and see what the larger stakes are. In my relatives, Catholics, they're more Catholic than I am. They do not like the Latin Mass. They do not like this SSPX thing. They do not like this other, whatever it is, these traditionalistic churches. They don't like them. They've been conditioned to say, well, we should modernize. We should modernize. There are certain, extenuating circumstances around abortion. There's extenuating circumstances around these things. The priests should be held accountable. There should be a healthy healing of a, kumbaya moment in the church where we hold hands and heal, not recognizing that their naivete is going to help destroy that church that they think that they're taking refuge in. And it's not going to happen. It's going to go away as a place where they can actually find that. So anyway, thank you very much. I'm done. And keep on trucking. Bye.